Welcome back. Glad to know you're still with us. You are still watching NTV Weekend Edition. Now, the school year resumes on Monday with many schools opening. However, of particular interest are those studying under the lower secondary school curriculum, which continues to raise concern among both teachers and parents. Uwezo has been looking into their situation and recently released a report which calls for more action by the ministry to resolve their shortcomings. But with the first cohort of learners under this curriculum expected to sit for their O-levels this year, there is concern about how they will fare. Now, to help us appreciate this, we do have Farida Nasirika, a senior program officer at Uwezo. Good evening, and thank you for joining us on Talk of the Nation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here.
Now, talk to us about what you see as the advantages of the new lower secondary school curriculum that was introduced 5 years ago.
The new lower secondary curriculum is actually a competency-based curriculum, which differs from the curriculum that was previously used in the aspect that it focuses on using competencies, a competency-based approach to teach as well as in the learning process. It has a genesis in the fact that we are seeing the world transforming. There are quite a number of changes that are happening every day. There are global challenges and demands that we also need to see that the learners who are being churned out are actually able to withstand and then also deal with those life challenges. So what we're looking at is a curriculum that prepares a whole child, who's able not only to gain knowledge, but also use the knowledge and the skills they've acquired to thrive and deal with life challenges, as well as innovations, as well as changes. Can they position themselves to be competitive in spaces where they know in the world there are other environmental, social, political aspects that they need to deal with just beyond gaining knowledge and passing through an education system that enables them to just acquire knowledge and live with that. Yeah, so the genesis of the curriculum is also based in the labor demands. These studies that have been informed by the fact that the graduates at whatever level or the learners that are being produced are actually not competent enough to meet the demands out there
on the market.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about the adaptation. In your findings, what did you make or what did you find out when it comes to adapting the students as well as the teachers to this new curriculum?
The study that we conducted, which we called the assessment of life skills and values, and now which we have actually, from the findings, revealed that many of the learners are having actually very low proficiencies with these core skills that we need them to have and thrive. Some of the things we looked at were problem solving, collaboration, self-awareness, and then respect as a value. These are the things we live with in society every day. And however much knowledge one has acquired, if they cannot use that knowledge to solve world problems, to know that if I am facing a challenge, I need to think through and recognize that there's actually a challenge or a problem that I'm dealing with. What are the causes of that problem? That is where they need to think through and be analytical about the information that they are using to try to solve these challenges or the world problems.
And so that is something they're trying to get
exactly. So the competency-based approach or the curriculum we're looking at is one where the content they're actually being taught, say in a subject like physics or chemistry or social studies or English, is embedding these other skills we're looking at: creativity, problem solving, self-awareness, to actually use the content and be able to reason and think beyond what the teacher is actually giving them, and the deviation from the fact that the teacher is only the source of knowledge. We need to see these kids asking, questioning approaches, so that then later on they are able to solve particular issues. So from the study that we conducted in 2022, around September, for example, in problem solving, we looked at over 11,000 children in 20 districts spread across rural and urban, and we found out that, for example, in problem solving, a huge number, about 3/4 of the children we assess between the ages of 13 to 17 are actually at the very low levels of proficiency in problem solving. And this is where we're looking at learners who are unable to recognize that there's actually a problem. For example, if we tell them fire has broken out in your house,
what do you do about
is that a problem?
Yes,
some would say no, it is not a problem. But we know that if fire has broken out, you can lose lives.
Yes.
There's loss of property. There's it can even actually destroy the community because it can spread to other homes. But for a learner to tell you, or a child between the ages of 13 to 17, that is actually not a problem, then it gives us a number of questions to how they actually dealing or seeing these things in the communities.
Yeah.
So if you're seeing that about 3/4 are still at a level where they have low or emerging proficiencies in solving problems, then we need to see this curriculum actually addressing such gaps and being able to know that if these children are taught, it's not just cramming and knowing that this is what has to be done. If the teacher tells me this is how map reading should be done, that is the alpha and omega. But what is it new that they bring in to know that if we're dealing with these aspects and in society, if we're dealing with problems, how much more do I need to think through and make accurate decisions based on the information I'm having and not to just take things wholesale.
Okay,
Yeah.
so there have been concerns that the current cohort of learners under this curriculum are not being made to exert themselves as much as the ones that are outgoing. So they don't read as much. Like we were earlier having a discussion, you know, there's a presumption that this one is an easier way, the notes are fewer. What do you make of this?
I think for me it is in relation to how it has been interpreted and perceived to be. Because if the learner is now, because we are shifting from the norm that had been the teacher is a fountain of knowledge, they are giving you notes and then you cram everything and reproduce that. But the shift here is that the learner drives their own learning. So they must actually do research beyond what the teacher has given them. The teacher is like a supportive mechanism or a process that helps them learn. So because of the fact that they are not seeing their peers having the notes that they used to have, it's presumed that it's possibly easier. But in actual sense,
because before a teacher would stand before you and dictate and you take in the notes and that's
and then reproduce everything without thinking what are the implications of the notes, what in relation to the subject I am studying. But the new angle with this is that the child is guided, the teacher guides the process of learning, the learner has to think through what the teacher has provided and reason beyond that, because they have, even when they are assessed and the assessments have been done already, right from senior 1 up to the current class they are in, they've been assessed from school, which is contributing at 20% to their final examination that they will take at the end of the year.
Does that also mean that the form of the way the questions are set
exactly changes? Most of the time when you are embedding content as well as the competence, the skills that I earlier indicated, like the ability to think,
identify a problem,
communicate. Remember, if it is just knowledge, I am just reproducing.
Right.
But if there are aspects of creativity, how am I using that knowledge to actually show that I am thinking beyond what has been given to me? I am being more analytical and I can think with or without the box and share a new angle or a new aspect to this particular topic. And that's where the difference is. We have been looking at a system where we're looking at grades, but here we are looking at proficiencies. What are you able to do within a certain aspect, as opposed to you getting 100. You can get the 100% or the 98, but what are you able to do with that 98?
Okay, is what is most important at the end of the day.
Exactly. So
what, in your view, what do you see as the shortcomings of this curriculum, and what do you think there's some adjustments that could be made to ensure better learning outcomes from this?
Of course, definitely, like with everything new, it comes with challenges. So one of the aspects that needs to be looked at is the way it is being implemented, especially when we look at the teachers. The teachers have been trained, but maybe more needs to be done. We know there was retooling because we already have the in-service teachers. who already had been trained using an old curriculum.
And for a very long time.
For a very long time. So there's need to have a change in mindset. There's a need to have these teachers constantly retooled because they're dealing with new aspects in relation to how they are teaching, not only how they are teaching, but also how they are assessing these learners. So in the sense that the teacher training has to be sort of refocused to see that both the teachers who are now going to be churned out, who are still maybe in the teacher training colleges, come out with the recognition that we need these life skills or competences embedded within what we are being taught, what their teacher trainers are teaching them, and how they are teaching these teachers to be, so that even when they go out, they know all these competences, they know what actually constitutes, for example, critical thinking or creativity, as highlighted in the curriculum. How will I know that a particular learner is actually good in communication? Are they good in listening? What are the various nitty-gritties that form that aspect of a particular skill? So when they go out, they will be able to nurture and train the learners to be able to think critically, because the teacher themselves already know what these things are, and then they can even assess, because to assess, like, say, what is going on, the 20% through the activities of integration or various aspects, when we are not, as teachers, very conversant with how to assess, will not guide the learners. Then also the issues about change in mindset. Many parents are still confused about how the grading happens for this new curriculum. Many of them are looking at
it is confusing.
The 70%, the 90%. If they do not see that, for them it's like their child is not learning.
Exactly.
There is no progress. But remember, behind those marks, we need to know how this child is actually using that content to get these other competencies also being seen. Yeah. Okay,
so from assessment across East Africa, how does this curriculum match with its counterparts in the region?
Of course, all the original 3 countries in East Africa and many more, like the rest of the East African community, are sort of adapting to these processes, to these competency-based approaches, to ensure that all their learners are actually competent. We have, for example, Kenya that is almost in their 7th year of implementing the competency-based curriculum.
Yes.
Uganda is about 4 years now. Of course, there was the interruption of COVID, but many countries have, even globally, have actually developed and adapted the competency-based approaches, as opposed to just knowledge.
Okay, so what are the ideal lessons that you have found to be vital or critical for learners to ensure that the right outcomes are, that there is a right outcome under this curriculum?
Many of the, like I said, attitude issues, the learners still think, because of, remember, they came from primary, where the main focus has been on an exam-oriented approach to learning and teaching, because we've had a system of assessment where what is not taught does not get assessed. So even when we have those competencies actually highlighted, 16 of them in the primary curriculum, the fact that they are not given emphasis by the teacher in the classroom and they are not assessed in PLE, then no one gives them attention. And so the learners get to secondary level with the belief that what they have already carried from the primary should be the same approach. And that is where they get issues. Many of them are waiting for this teacher to give them the notes, and this is very different. So we need to see that shift in mindsets, right from the learners to the parents and society as well, even the teachers and the whole education system, to see that there's that embrace of the importance of these life skills and values.
Okay, then as we conclude this conversation, if you had to recommend adjustments in the curriculum, what would your recommendations be? For it to best suit a learner, of course, to ensure that they do well, they get the skills that you're talking about, critical thinking, hands-on skills, also interpersonal skills.
The issue is for these competencies to be well defined in the curriculum, well detailed, so that the users of the curriculum, who are the teachers, find it very easy to interpret and relate. So that if we see that these are well clearly stated and elaborate, and at the same time in the teacher training institutions the same thing is happening, this teacher will go to the classroom well equipped with the knowledge, with the ability to dissect the curriculum and know that if I am helping this learner to acquire these skills, if I've assessed them and I've seen that they are having gaps in communication, this is how I'm helping them. This is what communication actually entails. Then I think we'll be on the right step.
And finally, do you would you say, or would you agree that this is a step that we have taken in the right direction in regards to the education system?
Definitely. I think it's the right step to go. But of course, there's need to address those, looking at the entire system of education. There are things that we need to see that really work, so that we help these learners not only acquire knowledge, but use that knowledge to deal with life challenges.
All right. Thank you, Farida Nasarika, for making time to speak with us, a Senior Program Officer at Uwezo. And that conversation takes us in for a short break, but NTV Weekend Edition continues shortly.